as fishing boats.
As we approach this Memorial Day holiday, we remember the veterans who have served our country.
But as time passes, we begin to lose their stories and the memories of their service. Then your side's Oren Liebermann traveled to West Virginia to visit a veteran who's become as much a part of history as the war in which he fought. Take a moment and stop what you're doing to watch and listen to his story. You'll be glad you did.
Most people read about history. Some even witness it. But only a few get to make history. Frank Woodruff Buckles has done a bit of each.
Lucky Lindy, as they call him.
Frank was 26 when Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic.
Landed at Le Bourget Airport, Paris.
44 when World War II ended.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And he was 68 when man walked on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Now 107 years old, Frank is one of the oldest Americans and the country's only surviving World War I veteran.
My serial number is 15577.
Frank was just 16 years old when America joined the First World War.
Your question was, why did I want to go in the Army? Well, why not? My God, world events.
Too flat-footed for the Navy, too young for the Marines. Frank faked a birth certificate for the Army.
Came back a week or so later, and I was 21.
Frank first crossed paths with history on his way to Europe with the 1st Fort Riley Casual Detachment. His troop ship was the Carpathia, a steamer famous for rescuing the survivors of another ship, the Titanic.
I sailed from there on the Carpathia in December 1917.
He served 3 years in Europe with the ambulance service before coming home. He still has his old uniform in his closet, and it still displays his rank of corporal.
When I came back from overseas, the war was over. No more parades. And nobody gave a damn about the soldiers.
Frank sought his future overseas again, this time across the Pacific, where a job in the Philippines led to another 3 years in the service, this time as a prisoner of war during World War II. In his display case, Frank keeps the one cup he was allowed to eat and drink from. After returning to the States, Frank started a 330-acre farm he still runs. He drove a car until he was 102, worked the farm until he was 104.
I do serious. I notice.
And regularly exercises and lifts weights.
I look on everybody as my contemporary. I don't feel that I am so much older.
Which is why, at more than a century old, Frank is in better shape than the memorial dedicated to the men and women he served with. Tucked between the National Mall and Independence Avenue, the World War I Memorial in Washington, D.C. has remained hidden from sight and memory. Tourists rarely know it exists, and guides barely stop to say more than a few words.
There is no plan right now, no plans to have a memorial dedicated to World War I. There are actually, believe it or not, 3 World War veterans still alive today. Okay? That's it, baby.
Like the World War II Memorial and the Vietnam Veterans Wall, this monument sits on National Park property, but it belongs to the city, listing the 499 troops from the District of Columbia who died in the war. Yet with no clear caretaker, it's been neglected. Now the only American around who fought in the First War has at least one more fight in him to make sure the people he served with are never forgotten.
I don't think any soldier of any war feels it's right for the previous generation to be forgotten.
Frank has help from groups like the D.C. Preservation League and the American Legion, who don't want to sacrifice the memory of anyone who sacrificed their life for the country.
If we fail to recognize his memory and the memory of those that he represents, his World War I generation, we'd run the risk of forgetting our World War II generation, our Korea, our Vietnam generation, Gulf, and our current wars.
2 things Frank is armed with for this fight: a sense of patriotism and a sense of humor. Are you afraid of being forgotten?
Forgotten? Hell, I never remembered in the first place.
Frank never chose to make history, but history chose to make him and the people he served with worth remembering. In West Virginia, Oren Liebermann, 10 on your side.
Remarkable man. Frank will head to Washington, D.C. soon, seeking backing and money to renovate that monument.